Hi, this is Ken and Michelle Bass.
And you're listening to the Resilient Parenting Podcast. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Michelle. Every now and then I try to sound a little more cultured.
Oh, really? When are you going to start?
It never works out anyway. But that word will be embraced here within the upcoming episode.
It will. Oh, I like what you did there.
See there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
First time for everything.
Speaking of first time,
Yeah.
We might have some new listeners listening to this episode. So welcome to the Resilient Parenting Podcast.
With Ken and Michelle.
With Ken and Michelle Bass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't
As
forget
opposed to the other Ken and Michelles that are doing the Resilient. What?
I just figured we should. Are we just Ken and Barbie now?
Okay.
We're just like a one name.
Sure.
Okay, I'm just Michelle. Usually I'm Ken's wife. It's usually what I'm referred to.
Okay.
Oh, so yeah, we're going to be talking about culture and how that has an impact on how we parent and how we were parented.
And how we might want to get you involved with what we're talking about too, right?
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Always. We really, we're trying to create the Resilient Parenting Podcast community. So, and it's not just me and Ken.
No.
Bass. Can I just say really quick that even like when you first, my parents first met you and they would introduce you to other people, it was like, this is my daughter, Michelle, and this is her husband, Ken Bass. It never was Ken. It was always Ken Bass.
It used to be sometimes Ken Bass.
Ken Bass.
All one word.
Oh, it is one word. It's kind of like, it's just part of who you are.
Better than other words have been called.
I have plenty of those.
I think we need to move on, don't we?
I'm just kidding. I don't call him anything.
Okay. If you want to find out more about what the podcast is all about besides listening to it, you can also get a hold of us.
Oh, yeah. We have an Instagram page and we have a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And what's great about the Facebook group is we will also let you know when a new episode is coming out. We will share the show notes and then resources that we learn about.
Right.
And you'll get to meet other people that are in the Resilient Parenting Podcast community.
And the next episode is on the way.
And we're joined by Maureen Durning, co-author of Strong, Teaching the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework to Parents and Professionals. I tried to get through that without messing up, and I still messed up.
Better you than me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To our podcast. So tell us that you have a rich history of strengthening families. So let our listeners know a little about you.
Oh, okay. Well, as you said, my name is Maureen Durning. I am the owner of Strengthening Families Training and Consulting Company here in Boise, Idaho. My consulting company is called Butterfly Trainings That Transform. Butterflyttt.com is the website.
That's easy to remember.
How many T's?
3 T's.
3 T's, okay.
Trainings that transform.
Oh, okay. And like your acronym, STRONG also. I mean, that's so catchy. That's easy to remember now. Okay.
Well, we called it Strong because of Strengthening Families. I've been doing work with Strengthening Families almost since it began. Strengthening Families, I know you've talked about it on other podcasts here, but it started from the Center for the Study of Social Policy in Washington, D.C. They created the framework. I love how this came about. They thought, okay, let's not think about families who are abusing and neglecting their children and figuring out, what's wrong with them. they instead decided, let's look at the families who aren't abusing and neglecting their children and figuring out the strengths that they have. And they call these things the protective factors.
Right.
So there are the 5 protective factors. I think you've talked about them: resilience, healthy social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, social and emotional competence, and concrete support, being able to find what you need when you need it. And and we all have these protective factors, but some people have them better than others. And so the work that we do is to try to help families directly, and also any people who work with families, any family serving agencies, help them to identify these protective factors and help build them not only in themselves but in others.
I love that. I actually remember taking a training by you and the other co-author, which Jane Zink.
Yes.
And I was really impressed with the curriculum. So I'm really excited to have you here today.
Well, and I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to be here.
I'll go anywhere to talk about strengthening families. I mean,
so you brought something in particular for us to work on today. You might be able to experience this a little bit in real time. So tell us more.
Okay. Well, today I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about culture and how culture has an effect on either our strength of these protective factors or the lack of them. We all grow up in cultures. In fact, it was so interesting. I just got back yesterday from visiting my daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren in Atlanta, Georgia. And on the way home, I'm looking out the plane window at all of those little tiny houses and thinking, there is a different culture inside every single one of those houses, our own individual family cultures, and how we grew up, and what was modeled for us, and what kind of things that we either did or didn't do, all those unwritten rules that we have within our own family cultures. We know that culture is bigger than that, but I thought today it would be interesting to to kind of take you through a couple of the activities that are in the Strong book that help people to identify what are the things in their own family cultures that are either serving them or maybe are not serving them so well. I like to think of it kind of as conscious parenting. Do we do things just because we're reacting in the way we've always reacted, or do we respond because the culture we're creating for ourselves and for our children is something that we have put some conscious thought into?
Wow.
So what I would love to do right now is
ready,
to
Ken?
ask you two, what do you think about time? Do you, when you were growing up, was your family, were they on time all the time, or were you late all the time, or was it somewhere in the middle?
We were always on time. I know that.
But what is on time? For me, on time is 15 minutes early.
We weren't that on time.
That's me. That's me. Are you Midwestern? I'm a Midwestern girl. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late.
I'm still like that, and my dad is still like that. You know, if we say 2, he's going to get there at 1:45. Yeah, you don't want anyone to wait for you. So out of respect, you make sure that you're there on time.
Yeah.
So
well, that takes me right to the image that we like to do when we do this activity with groups, is to think of an iceberg. So when you think of an iceberg, you know, there's the little tiny bit that's above the water, and then most of it, then most of it is below the water. So the things that are above the water are the things that you see. You know, like you see whether you're on time or late. You see what kind of clothes you're wearing and what kind of food you're eating and that kind of thing. Below the water, though, is those attitudes that inform what's above the water. So you were saying that your father, you know, it's respect for other people. When we do this activity, there's always, you know, some that are, it's very funny. We do this sometimes, not too much of a pun, but the icebreaker activity, the iceberg activity is an icebreaker. And so, so we talk about it as those who are late they will often say, well, they just didn't care, or else their parents just didn't have their act together and couldn't get out the door on time. Or they were just going with the flow and they didn't care, and they figured, well, nobody has to wait for us. We'll show up whenever we want to. Where the people who are early are. I mean, we could have fist fights in the room when we bring this activity up sometime.
Sometimes the people who are early don't have very young kids, though.
I did. I always was early because if not, it would stress me out. But I will say that I feel a little bit like a stick in the mud. Like I want to be able to be like, I'm chill. I'm going to come in when I want to. Nope, I'll stress. I have to get there on time.
So those are those below the water things that you feel and that, you probably got from your parents. So the next part of the activity that we do with groups then is we say, okay, let's think of some other things. We used to think the thing about being on time was a real simple thing, and it turns out it isn't. So I'll just throw out some topics, and we don't have to talk about them, but we'll talk about, well, what did meal times look like in your house? Or who took care of the children? Or what was work like? Did your parents work? Did both of them work? How about money? What did people think about money? Did you have enough? Did you not have enough? When you got money, were you going to spend it right away, or was it important to save money?
We're talking about back then, not now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
When you're
No, let's talk about it now.
I can see Michelle looking across the table at me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's so interesting, too, when two people get together and now you're creating yet another culture. And what part of your cultures are you bringing? And so if you've got one spender and one saver, there's going to have to be some discussion there.
I can't see you looking at me, Michelle.
Yeah.
Guess which one I am.
The one that's 15 minutes early. Telling the guy who could be 5 minutes late, come on, it'll be late.
Oh, goodness. So, also thinking about education, thinking about the importance or not importance of religion. So when we get people thinking about these things, we'll say, as part of the activity, okay, put up on the top of your iceberg what you actually did about these things growing up, and then what were the values underneath. And if those values don't match what you feel like you'd really like to pass on to your children, then good heavens, aren't we lucky we can change them?
Right.
We don't have to, and it gets back to what I was saying earlier, like conscious parenting, to be aware of all of these influences that come.
It's so true.
Through your heritage. I think it would be interesting now to go on to another activity that we call in the book, in the Strong book, the lesson plan is called My Emotional Landscape, because I was talking earlier about the 5 protective factors, and one of them that we find so interesting to delve into with families is how you learned about emotions yourself and what you teach your children about emotions. So the social and emotional competence, of course, is how children are able to make friends and get along with other people, and also how to appropriately handle their emotions. And to learn, and this was a big one for me, to learn that all emotions are okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. Many times when we do this activity with families or with groups of any kind, they'll say, gee, I wasn't really allowed to have any emotions. I was supposed to just sit in the corner.
Well, yeah, part of that's the culture, too, of decades ago, men especially. We're not supposed to be able to cry. Men don't cry, that kind of thing. I've always cried.
Okay, so one of the things that I didn't mention earlier that is a big one was there a difference growing up in how boys were treated and girls were treated? I grew up a long time ago, and on a Saturday, me and my sisters would clean the house while my father and my brother went out and played golf.
Really?
And it seemed normal. I mean, that was normal at the time. It was the 50s. It was the 60s.
Mowing the lawn?
And no, they were out playing golf. So, you know, you can change these things. You can change.
Yep.
You can change the ideas of what boys and girls do. Many
roles.
people will
The
say
roles,
that you know boys had a different curfew than girls. Boys either had more or less freedom than girls. You know.
So what are some questions? Where do you
So,
can you tell I'm
this is so
eager?
interesting, this emotional landscape. So one of the activities that we just love doing with groups. So, and I'll use you as a guinea pig. We usually will ask about.
She's talking to Ken.
Well, yeah, I'm talking to Ken. He looks like a guinea pig sitting there.
He does. Why do you think I was like, let's get to the questions?
I need to suck in my cheeks or something?
So when you were angry as a child, what did you do?
What did I do?
If you remember being angry.
I do remember throwing temper tantrums.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember. I didn't get on the floor and kick the floor or something like that, but I did get mad and slam doors and stuff.
Oh, okay. You would slam doors. So what did the adults around you do then?
Back then, doing something like that could constitute possibly a spanking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel?
It hurt. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it did. That was rare, actually, that I did get spanked. But maybe I'd have something taken away from me, or I'd be sent to my room and stay there until I, learned.
Yeah,
to
there was some
calm
sort
down.
of punishment.
Yeah.
Some sort of
Yeah.
punishment for being angry.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you wish they had done?
Gosh, I don't know. I guess I feel like it was whatever happened to me was warranted at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in these days, and what I've learned about parenting, a lot from Michelle, is maybe you would ask the kid, what is making you angry? What's behind all this? You get into the psychology
What do
of
you
it all.
need?
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah, what do you need? What do you need? And listen, listen. Our favorite phrase, tell me more, tell me more. So one of the things that we love to do is we'll go through this with groups with when you were angry, what would you do? When you were sad, when you were afraid, or when you were excited, and go through those four questions with a group or with individuals.
I could actually answer that one.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Which one?
The one that you just did.
Oh, okay.
The angry one.
The angry one. So it really was, keep your emotions to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I was angry, I would go to my room and scream in my pillow.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do. And so what was the other question?
What would you wish they'd do?
What did the parents do? What did the adults do? Or how did it make you feel? What did they do? And then what do you wish they had done?
I wish that I had been able to express how I was feeling and learn how to do it in a healthy way, because I found that as I got older, it was hard for me to ask for what I needed. And then in situations where maybe there was a disagreement, it was harder for me to be able to stay in those conversations. And so as a parent now, we have open dialogue, and emotions are welcome, and there's a why behind the behavior, and so we make sure that we are open and have communication, and feelings are felt, and needs are asked, and sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't, but learning some of those skills, and I was very intentional about what I wanted how I wanted to parent. Yeah.
So you just did the whole second part of the activity.
Oh. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank
Look
you.
at me
this is
being
great.
on time a
So
little
this
early.
is great because then the second part of the activity is we'll say then, okay, the first part was the emotion, what did I learn? Now we move on to what am I want to teach? And you are terrific because you just answered the whole thing. So we'll go through the same thing. When a child I know is angry or sad or fearful or excited, how does it make me feel? What's my default reaction? Because, if I wasn't allowed to feel angry when I was a child, then sometimes as an adult, that's my default reaction will be to do the same thing that was done to me. And then another way to react. And that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You were choosing a different way to react than what you were choosing to be as a parent what you wish you had had as a parent
Yes.
when you were a child.
Right.
So when we do this activity with groups, it is so effective. The aha moments of people who are like, oh, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can be the parent to my child that I wish I had had.
Right.
And then the other thing that I love is that when we do this, and often Jane and I or whoever I'm training with will go along and answer it too. And I'm a crier, so I cry at everything. I cry for all four. Any emotion I feel, there I am crying. In fact, when I cry around my kids, if something, sweet or something happens, they're like, oh, it doesn't count. That's just mom crying. Unless somebody else is crying, it really doesn't count.
So the kids know because Ken's a crier, and it's a beautiful thing that he is able to just have that open emotion in front of the kids, and I think it's just been a gift for you to be able to share that, but it always makes them giggle.
It makes me giggle?
It makes the kids giggle
Oh,
when
the
you
kids
cry,
giggle when
because
I
it's
cry.
like, oh, here we go. Here's Dad.
Yeah, something sad happens like in a movie on TV or something like that.
Oh, we
they
can't
all
make
turn
eye-
and look at me. Let's watch Dad cry.
Yeah.
Allergies. It's allergies, okay?
No, you know what I love about you is you actually will be okay, like this is how I'm feeling, and it's okay to feel this. And I think that is something that, like you said, culturally, societal. Oh, excuse me.
Culturally, things have changed since I was a kid, obviously.
But in other cultures,
It's still,
masculinity is important, and crying and showing emotion and masculinity. Sometimes, there's some thoughts that maybe they don't go together.
Right.
I actually think the strongest men are the ones who can cry.
Yeah.
Yay.
I do too. I do
Look
too.
at him
Flexing my
his-
muscles.
his-
Flexing your...
is that what you're doing?
Okay.
Now,
Don't you have something else you want to talk about here?
Don't start crying on us, Ken.
You're making her feel uncomfortable. Okay, how do we...
Let me tell you what I'd rather you do.
Well, just to wrap this up, what we're talking about here is that family culture and the individual culture. And I just recently heard this wonderful phrase, and you've probably heard the phrase that we're moving from what happened to you. From what's wrong with you, we're moving to what happened to you. And now they're expanding the question more to what happened before you. What happened to those generations before that created the culture that you are now in? And then the big picture is what's happening around you. So what kind of a culture are you living in? And this is what Strengthening Families, what the Center for the Study of Social Policy, what they're moving on to, the importance of the bigger culture on those individual families and the individual protective factors in our lives.
So what can families do today? Based on everything, I hope you were listening and thinking to yourself, answering the questions that were asked. But what are some things that families can do right now?
I think go home, draw yourself an iceberg.
Oh.
Put all of those things that you do on top of the iceberg and take some time for self-reflection to think about gee, am I treating my sons differently than my daughters? And why am I doing that? And do I want to change it? Again, it's the idea of, I love the idea of conscious parenting, and I love the idea of peaceful parenting, of trying to create a peaceful family situation in that culture that's inside your own little house. You know, you can create whatever you want in your own little house, and that to me is the power of the protective factors too, to think about those things that make you strong, those things that help you to not be overcome by stress. You know, we always say, what are these protective factors protecting us from? They're protecting us from being overwhelmed by stress.
Right.
And so being a conscious parent will help us to do that.
Oh, that's
where can we find
amazing.
out more about Strong itself and what you've been talking about?
Well, I have a website, butterflyttt.com. We are right now in the process, and I'm hoping within about the next month or so, the Strong textbook is going to be online. I'm so excited.
Nice.
We're going to have it online. We do trainings. You know, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can contact me through the website. And, you know, we do trainings. Jane and I go all over the country. Now we do mostly trainings on Zoom, and we've found that they work pretty well.
They do work pretty well. Oh,
Well, that website on our
Oh, yes, it'll be in the
podcast
show
and
notes.
Yeah,
It'll be in the show notes. Thank you so much. I just, this whole conversation is just wonderful. I just love it.
I know. I feel like I may cry.
Oh, my
I know.
goodness.
Oh, let's all go home and cry.
I have to drive home with them.
This was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.